Whenever the police make a big seizure, you will always hear about street value, and in this episode, this story will explain how they sometimes come to these calculations. One of the main reasons is because whenever they find kilos of cocaine, they will always discover with it mixing agents, and the mixing agent is used to increase value, and the people responsible will then repress the cocaine so it looks like it hasn't been touched. This of course creates a lot of profits, and the police don't want to miss out on being able to add this to the prosecution when it comes to court. This is the Scarcity Studios YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And our sponsors are Alpha Claims and Hire Birmingham, the leading and best accident management company. Get a replacement car anywhere in 1 hour. In this latest episode of Encrochat, 5 men have been jailed for their roles in an organised crime gang that was selling kilos of cocaine that they'd pressed themselves across the south of England. Encrochat was a messaging app service, and users paid a lot of money to be able to use these phones that had no microphones, and the only way you could communicate was through text. And this proved to be the downfall when French police created a malware and accessed the servers of Encrochat, and then they was able to read all of the messages, and this was billions of messages between different gangsters across the world. One of the defendants in this case is called Jed Porter, 26 years old. He was the man that ran the processing factory. And when Encrochat Communications revealed to the police messages that he was repackaging blocks of cocaine and mixing them with cutting agents. When the police arrived at Marlow Close in Malden, Essex on August 18th, 2021, he was stopped by police as he was walking nearby. When he was stopped, he said, "You probably want to get your bin bags out." When the police entered the property, they found it was a drug processing factory, and the utility room and garage was full of equipment in order to repackage cocaine. They discovered a press, 12 kilos of cocaine, most of which had been repressed and stamped with logos. They also found mixing bowls, cutting agents and other drug paraphernalia. £14,000 in money was also seized, and 3 kilos of cannabis. And this was the first arrest before the police arrested 4 others. They have all been jailed today for the wholesale supply of cocaine. The investigation was led by Kent and Essex Serious Crime Directorate, and through Encrochat messages they discovered between March and June 2020, William Ferguson purchased cocaine blocks. The investigation was led by Kent and Essex Serious Crime Directorate, and they established that between March and June 2020, William Ferguson repeatedly purchased cocaine blocks as part of a conspiracy with other Encrochat users. Ferguson would then sell the blocks with a profit and was assisted by Aaron Duff. He acted as a driver, collecting and delivering supplies in bulk quantities. The Encrochat data showed Nathaniel Green was another user who had made purchases from Ferguson. Green worked with an associate called Billy Robinson, and they would transport cocaine to others in the chain. On the 17th of July 2020, during the height of the Encrochat raids, they raided the home of Green in Chatham. Officers discovered bundles of money in supermarket bags as well as several envelopes with names on. In total, £34,000 was seized, along with cannabis supplies and an air weapon. Knuckle dusters and a knife were recovered from 2 cars outside. The home of Robinson, also in the same area, was searched, and they found a further £2,900 and a banknote counting machine. In May 2021, the investigation led to the arrest of Ferguson from Tunbridge Wells and Duff from Pembury. All 5 men were charged in connection with supplying drugs and remanded in custody at Maidstone Crown Court. They pleaded guilty, and the sentences are as follows. Ferguson pled guilty to 3 counts of supplying cocaine, and he also admitted the charge of acquiring criminal property. A further charge of conspiracy to import cocaine was ordered to lie on file, and on Wednesday the 19th of January 2022, he was sentenced to 13 years and 6 months. Duff pled guilty to conspiracy to supply drugs, and he was sentenced to 8 years. Jed Porter pled guilty to conspiracy to supply drugs, and also a further charge of heroin will lie on file. He was jailed for 10 years and 10 months. Green and Robinson were sentenced on the 20th of January. Green pled guilty to 3 counts of supplying drugs and further charges in relation to cannabis with intent to supply. Robinson admitted a charge of conspiracy to supply cocaine and further counts of conspiracy to supply cannabis and also amphetamine. He received a 6-year and 9-month sentence, and Detective Superintendent Lee Morton from the Crime and Essex Serious Crime Directorate said Ferguson and Green in particular used Encrochat to communicate with the likes of distributors and other suppliers in a commercial chain. They sourced wholesale quantities of cocaine before selling them to other Encrochat users, who would then repress them. Evidence showed that over the period, Ferguson received 18 kilos of cocaine and redistributed at least 15. He would typically make a profit of £500 to £1,000 per kilo. And the evidence strongly indicated that Green was involved in the supply and transportation of at least 14 kilos of cocaine. And if it wasn't for the fact they'd hacked Encrochat, they would never have found this out. So this story comes from Kent, but this other story comes from Wales, because as everybody knows, drugs are very popular all over the country. More than £1.8 million was trafficked into Swansea in 5 months by a criminal gang that used Encrochat phones to disguise their activities. Police said that 42 kilos of the drugs were brought into South Wales and onward to supply local dealers and users. The operation was uncovered when police received the messages sent to them by French police. 3 of the major figures in this conspiracy were jailed for 10 years, and a 4th man who ran his own furniture removal business and was a courier has also been jailed. The prosecution told Swansea Crown Court the conspiracy involved the supply of wholesale quantities of cocaine distributed throughout South Wales. The Swansea end of the operation was run by Nathan Webber, 28 years old, and 36-year-old James Gallagher, who each had their own customer base and suppliers, but would help out in securing the best deal. The court heard that between March and July 2020, the pair sourced 42 kilos of cocaine from their England-based suppliers. One of the contacts was 52-year-old Peter Mitchell. He would drive consignments to Swansea from his home in Bradford, and the prosecutors said that the operation came to light after law enforcement agencies accessed the Encrochat messages, and it showed regular contact between Webber, Gallagher and Mitchell. There was other users in the conversations that are yet to be identified, but it showed the regular discussion of drug prices per kilo along with delivery details and addresses in the Morriston and Port Talbot area. One of the messages even made reference to drug dealers in Colombia that had 100 kilos of coke ready to go. So when we first started getting court cases in the UK, it was mainly in Liverpool, and now you're starting to see different cases spreading from around the UK, further down south and also in Wales. So really appreciate you joining me today, and I want to hear what everyone has to say. Don't forget to check out the Encrochat playlist that shows all of the coverage over the past year to do with the encrypted mobile phone service. And don't forget to follow me online as well at Scarcity Studios on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter and Facebook. And I'll be back again very shortly with some more news. Peace.